Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I have a crazy exciting interview to share with you today. I have no idea how I managed to swing this, but I am beyond honored to be introducing you on the show today to Tyler Balliet. Tyler is an entrepreneur and journalist who's been reshaping how people experience wine since 2006. She co-founded Rosé Mansion, a massive rosé-themed wine playground. Like, how amazing does that sound? In New York City, it drew over 225,000 visitors. She's also co-founded Wine Riot, which was a touring wine festival with 150,000 attendees. And don't worry, I will definitely be asking her about these crazy, cool experiences so we can learn more about them during the interview. She was named to Inc. magazine's 30 Under 30 and Wine Enthusiast 40 Under 40. Tyler has judged international wine competitions, explored wine regions around the world, and has been featured on Good Morning America, CNN, and the New York Times. And now we get to add the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast on that list. Like, how cool is that? Her new book, Rebel School of Wine, is a bold, visually driven manifesto for a new generation of wine drinkers. In this episode, you'll discover how Tyler went from a beer drinking family in Wisconsin. Sounds familiar. I know another Wisconsin wine lover. I'm currently pointing to myself if you can't see through the podcast. How Tyler went from her beer drinking family in Wisconsin to creating a massive rosé themed wine playground in New York. What inspired her to write The Rebel School of Wine, and what makes it different from other wine books out there. She's also going to give us an inside look at the wine industry from her point of view, along with thoughts on what changes need to happen in the coming years for it to continue to thrive. And be sure to listen carefully to the whole episode for a chance to win a copy of Tyler's new book, The Rebel School of Wine. This will run from the day this is released, so April 30th until May 7th of 2025. So be sure to do it before May 7th, 2025. But I will be sharing a code word sometime during this interview. Don't worry, I'm going to make it very obvious. I'm going to say, hey, here's the code word. I'm not going to make you try to find it. I'm going to tell you. And so simply DM me on Instagram at Cork and Fizz, or you can email me, haley@corkandfizz.com. Send me that code word, and you'll be entered into the giveaway for the book. And like I said, the giveaway ends May 7th, 2025. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This is so great to get to talk to you, and for the book. I've been having so fun.
Oh, good. Good. I love the questions.
Fun.
The questions were really great.
Yes. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with these. But of course, let's start off. I always like to start off with a little intro. I'll kind of do your little intro before this, but it's always fun for you to introduce yourself and, tell us how you first got into wine.
Yeah, how I got started in wine. So, I don't come from a family that drinks wine. I grew up in Wisconsin, and their drink of choice was the champagne of beers, right? Like Miller High Life. And so in college, I started drinking some cheaper wines, but nothing that was really mattered. And after college, I ended up moving to France for a year. And it wasn't like everybody has this idea of oh, you live in Paris, it's wonderful. No, I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was like the Nebraska of France, more cows than people, but we were really close to the Loire Valley. And so I got to drink a lot of wine. I didn't know anything about it, but I drank a lot of it. And then after college, I lived in France, I moved to Boston kind of randomly. And I got a day job in an office. And then across the street from my apartment was a wine shop. And so I got a job working there 2 nights a week, mostly to get a discount and hang out. And I just kind of fell in love with wine, but I also just saw a giant opportunity there. There were so many young people like me trying to learn about wine, and there wasn't a good resource. So that's how I ended up working in wine.
Yeah, I love it. It's so funny. You are not the first person that I've met, like, who is like very much in the wine world and also like kind of in the wine education space, who is from Wisconsin. So I'm also from Wisconsin. I grew up in a super small town in Southwest Wisconsin, and
Oh,
then
really?
what is her name? Slick Wines. Have you
Oh,
met her
yeah, yeah,
before?
yeah. No, we've talked about because I know her too, and like we talked about
Yes,
that.
she is also from Wisconsin. Oh, and also the French wine tutor. She also grew up in
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
yeah. I'm friends with her too, and we've been talking about that.
Isn't that like wild? We're like, yeah, the place where you mostly drink beer, and we're all like, no, 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 we're gonna go the wine route.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you leave, you're like, okay, well, can I upgrade this situation at all?
Right? No, that is too funny. Okay, so I know like the main plan of this interview is to talk about your book. There are so many fun things about it. But in going through your intro and even in reading like the very beginning of the book where you talk about how you got to, writing it, you are a very cool person. And also looking at your apartment now, I'm like, this all I just need everyone listening to understand like how cool you are. Can you tell us a little bit more about your previous wine adventures and especially the Wine Riot and Rosé Mansion?
Yeah. So in 2009, I started a wine festival called Wine Riot. And basically, I started going to all these wine events, like these big wine festivals, and they sucked. Like they were bad. And I was like, how do you take an entire room full of people and alcohol and make this suck? Like you have to be really bad at what you do. I'm like, I can do a better job than this. So I was in my mid 20s and decided to throw this 3,000 person wine event. And it was called Wine Riot, and it worked. And we sold out the Saturday night, sold like 1,800 tickets over the weekend. I was hooked. I was addicted. And I was like, let's do it again. And then let's do it again. Let's do it again. And what it turned into was this traveling wine festival where we would sell between 3,000 and 6,000 tickets every weekend, like to different weekends. And we did it in 6 cities across the country. So the main cities were Boston, Chicago, New York, DC, LA, San Francisco. I think that's 6. And you could come and you could taste 250 different wines from every major region in the world. And I made sure that there was booths that were like, this is the French booth. This is the, California booth. And then we had grape booths. So you had the Cabernet. You could taste 8 Cabernets from different regions all side by side. And, we trained the staff and we hired people. And it was really, really, really fun. It was also really exhausting. And so I ended up basically selling that company. And a couple of years later, in 2018, I started this company called Rosé Mansion. And so the idea was to kind of take that same wine education meets fun and give it a home in Manhattan, which is kind of a wild thing. And at the time in 2018, like rosé was really peaking, right? It was like the peak of like rosé trendiness and culture, and pop-ups were peaking. And my partner and I decided to just kind of YOLO and open the space. And we convinced this landlord to lease us this 14,000 square foot retail space in the middle of Manhattan. And we convinced a bunch of vendors to front us the money to build it. And we built this 14,000 square foot giant wine, like pink wine amusement park. And you could jump out of a giant cake and throw confetti and drink sparkling wine. You could swing from a giant chandelier. You could blend your own custom glass of wine. And the whole thing was totally nuts because we didn't really have the money to start this thing. We just like maxed out all my credit cards and kind of hoped. And we went from the night before we opened, I was pouring pink epoxy flooring until 5 o'clock in the morning. 5 hours later at 10 a.m., I was on Good Morning America. It was nuts. And then the whole thing just took off, and we opened a second one because that one closed after like 16 weeks. We opened a second one that was bigger. It was 32,000 square feet. And yeah, in 12 months, we had 225,000 people buy tickets and come. Like every weekend, Friday night, 2,000 people, Saturday, 2,000 people, Sunday, 2,000 people. It was really crazy. And so, yeah, if you sum up my career as a whole, like I basically, a lot of people run away to the circus. I own them. I own circuses.
I love that. I'm like, all of that. I'm just like, okay, when is the Wine Riot coming to Seattle? Like, I need that. Like, the fact that it was like not, it had every region. I was like thinking about that because like the biggest
Mm,
kind of like event I've been to is like Taste Washington up here in Seattle, which is wonderful. You get
yeah.
to meet some like amazing, winemakers in Washington and try a lot of
Mhm.
the wines, but it's all Washington wine. Like, how
Yeah.
amazing would it be to like walk into a space and see wine from all over and not even just like by region. You're like, no, no, let's think about it also. Like, you want to try a grape from a different, like, that's how you learn. Like, that's how you get to do that.
Yeah, right? We actually tried to bring it to Seattle. The liquor laws were a little weird, so, like, we
Fair.
had some troubles. And I went to college in Washington. I went to college in Olympia.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the liquor laws are very difficult here.
I think they've changed a bit, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that sounds really fun. And also Rosé Mansion. Is that still a thing?
No, sadly, the pandemic wiped us
Oh,
out.
that's fair. That would
I
be hard.
know. We just got to the point where we raised a bunch of money and we were gonna expand it, and I had, like, 2 leases on my desk I was ready to sign, and then March 2020 came around, so, yeah.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye, and I'll have a question later on in the interview about what's coming next. I'm like, if that's in your past, there's definitely amazing things that are coming in the future as
Mhm.
well. Even if you don't know what they are, we're all going to be keeping an eye out for what they are. Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, now that people know like how cool you are, like what we're setting the stage here, let's talk about your book, The Rebel School of Wine. And
Mhm.
folks who are listening, they cannot see it. I don't have a video version of this, but folks, look it up. Even the cover of it shows you like how fun this book is going to be about wine. But can you start to tell us what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. So I actually wrote the outline for this book about 15 years ago. So in 2010, I wrote this outline because I knew that this needed to exist, right? And I had to sit down with a major publisher, I think in 2010 or 2011. And they asked me to write a sample chapter. And halfway through writing the sample chapter, I was basically like, I don't have time for this. Like, I cannot do this. This is going to take way too long. No. And just left it in a Google Drive folder. And when the pandemic hit and we lost our companies, I've had this Morgan has been my business partner for 18 years. We ran Wine Riot together. We owned a wine store together. We created Rosé Mansion together. And so when we lost Rosé Mansion, it was super traumatic. And when the dust settled, she was basically like, poke, 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 poke. Remember, we have an outline for a book. This would be a perfect time. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of work. And she went to Emerson College, and she went to school for publishing. And so she called some of her publishing friends who are book agents. And before I knew it, I had a book deal with HarperCollins. And then I had to sit down and write it. But ultimately, like, why, like, what I wanted to do is I wanted to write the book that I wish I had when I was getting started. There were so many questions that I wish I had known the answer to, and some of them that took an embarrassingly long amount of time to find out. But then also, like, I still had a lot of questions about wine, and I'm just like really lucky that I got the opportunity to sit and research some of these and really like dig into it. But then I get to share them with everybody, which is super cool.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Also, it like hit me when you were like, 15 years ago, I wrote this in 2010. I was like, no, that wasn't 15 years ago.
I know. But I was like, oh crap.
Nope, that's true. That is what it happened. Well, okay, so this book, who did you write this for, and what can folks expect to learn from reading it?
Yeah, I wrote this book for smart people, right? Like, I think what drives me so crazy about wine a lot is that, oh, we have to dumb it down. No, you don't. You don't have to dumb anything down. You need to connect the dots, right? You need to explain to smart people why this matters and how it fits in. And part of that is because I cut my teeth doing wine events and wine courses. Like I used before we had Wine Riot, even when we were running that, I was living in Boston for a lot of that time, and I was doing events for 30 or 50 people in the basement of wine stores. In Boston, you do an event in the basement of a wine store, and you're like, okay, how they got 2 PhDs, we got 6 people with master's degrees, I got 3 scientists. You need you're talking to really smart people, right? You're not babying them with these, well, let me tell you how wine works. No, no, no. They want how the dots are connected. And so ultimately, like that's what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it a book for smart people that are curious about the world and tell them how wine fits in, you know?
Yeah, no, I like that. It's like it's not like you're not writing a school book, a textbook, right, on like all the definitions of everything. And most people know some things about wine. They hear things about wine more often than not. In terms of when I'm teaching folks, they're like, "Oh, I've heard that before, but what does that mean?" Or like
Yeah.
how does that connect to like what I'm actually tasting right now or, diving into those. So I think that's a great thing to call out. And yeah, a lot of us are smart in many ways and we just haven't learned about wine yet.
Yeah, and it's about again connecting the dots, like starting with an anchor point, starting with something people know. Like we all went to elementary school and we looked at maps. Great, maps are a great place to start, right? You
Yeah.
can start with historical pieces that everybody is aware of. Like, well, there's this thing called the Great Depression. Let's start there, right?
Yeah.
And then you use those as anchor points to move forward and then explain how wine fits into that. And when you do that, it just clicks. You can watch the light bulb go off, and make it practical, make it romantic, make it curious, and then I added some skeptical to it too,
Which
because I'm a
it is
very
really
skeptical
fun.
person.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I really appreciated that. I'm also very skeptical and I question everything. So I really enjoyed in reading your book that like a lot of times a question would pop up and you would like answer it later on. I'd be like, yeah, this is my person. Like you just like
Mhm.
kind of knew you were almost in my head for some of it. It was a little weird, but it was good. So, okay, before we get to the next question, you're giving away 3 of the books, which is really exciting through Cork and Fizz. One of them is through the podcast. And so to do that, folks who are listening right now, you just need to DM me on Instagram at Cork and Fizz or email me if you don't have Instagram. It's Haley at Cork and Fizz. And just tell me the code word, which is going to be Rebel Yell. Technically, it's 2 words. You can combine them if you want. I just felt Rebel Yell felt really good for this. So code word is Rebel Yell. Send it to me and I will do a giveaway. We will pick the winner in a week after this podcast goes out, which I believe will be May 7th is when it ends. So apologies if you're listening to this after May 7th, 2025, but you can still go get Tyler's book and we'll let you know a discount code to do that later. But okay, just wanted to share that insight in there. But now let's talk about the book. So we've also mentioned there are a lot of wine books out there, and I would know I have quite a collection. It is like how I got into wine was reading wine books. I feel like you can learn so much before you even go to like a training session or a class, and those are still great too, but there's so many great books out there. How would you say yours is different from a lot of the wine books out there? Hey, wine lover, interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been thinking, I'd love to taste wine live with Haley. I mean, who isn't thinking that? Well, say hello to the Cork Crew, my virtual tasting club where wine meets fun, learning, and the best happy hour you've ever had, all from the comfort of your couch. Every month, we explore a new wine theme together. You'll get expert tips, delicious food pairings, and stories that bring each bottle to life. You can order the feature wines from my partner shop, grab something similar locally, or just sip whatever you've already got. No pressure and no wine purchase required in this club. In 2025, I've made this club even better. You get to choose between 2 tasting dates each month, and everything is recorded so you can catch up anytime. We've also just launched our exclusive Cork Crew app, where you'll find all of your event info, wine recommendations, community connection, all in one place. It is accessible via your phone or your computer. As a member, you'll also get 6 free guest passes so you can invite friends, quarterly wine trivia nights, winemaker Q&As, a private online community, discounts on private tastings, and so much more. And when I say everyone is welcome, I mean everyone. Whether you're brand new to wine or a total cork dork like me, you'll fit right in. Loud or quiet, wine curious or wine obsessed, this space is for you. Join today and get your first 2 months for just $8 a month. I mean, heck, that's like a drink at Starbucks. Use code WINE SPECIAL, no spaces, or you can save $80 on the yearly membership. When you sign up for the annual subscription, use code WINESPECIAL-YEAR. Head to thecorkcrew.com. That's thecorkcrew.com to sign up, and I'll see you at our next tasting. Cheers!
I wanted to write a comprehensive guide, right? I wanted it to have like every region, every style, every grape, and like an overview. And those obviously exist, right? A lot of people have written those. But what I wanted to do different was one was like the way that you read my book. I have pretty intense ADHD, right? And so I can't read a book cover to cover or front to back, and especially the wine books. A lot of times I want to look up some information or I just want to flip through it. So I really created this like a magazine. There's 450 different illustrations. So you can just flip through it and open up any page and start reading. You don't have to have read the page before, right? And I also wanted so you could look things up. But again, getting back, like I wanted to connect the dots for people. I wanted to, you know, this happened, therefore, this is the wine you're drinking now, and I wanted to almost every single wine book I've ever gotten that's one of these comprehensive books. There's a lot of great textbooks out there and there's a lot of great like reference books, but they're super dense. And so what I wanted to do was answer the questions of how did we get here? Why do we do this? Why do we make this wine? Who makes it? And so my book isn't about flavors and aromas. It's in there. You can find, what things taste like generally. But I think the trick to really, truly understanding wine is you have to understand the people. Who makes it? Why do they make it? Who drinks it? Like when and why do they drink it? And if you can start answering those questions, then you can understand wine. Then nothing else is that difficult after that. When you realize that Italians make Italian wine, you're like, oh, that's why it doesn't make any sense, but it's really cool, right? And the French make the French wine, you're like, oh, that's why their system hasn't really changed and they're really, picky. When you like Germans make German wine, you're like, okay, that's why the labels are so logical, but the system is so complicated. And those are just like some generalizations, but like you get into the nitty gritty of it. And I think that's really what separates mine is it's about people, and using
Yeah.
that to understand wine.
Yeah. Well, and I like too that you're like what I'm hearing too is like you're answering the questions of why and who
Mhm,
and where and not necessarily only the question of what. Like, I
mhm.
think so many are just like, this is what you're tasting and this is what you can expect. And you're like, yeah, I'll tell you that. But like, here's why. And here's who's involved in that and who would like to drink this. And I think you
Yeah.
also I really loved, I saw, I was stalking your Instagram, sorry. But I saw a post that you did about like how we advertise wine. And this will
Mhm.
get into the next question. But I love that you called out that like right now, again, we're focusing on the what so much on wine versus the what does it allow you to do? Why would you want this? And related it to the computer world. Like the reason why, Apple has done so well is they tell you, they don't say, oh, the iPod, Nano is like it contains this many songs and you can get it in these colors. And they're like, no, you can put a whole library of songs in your pocket. How cool is that? And you're like, wait,
Mhm.
oh, that's cool. And I feel like that kind of hits in like you're talking about with the book, where it's like it's not just the what of the wine, it's everything around it.
Yeah. And Apple doesn't market or tell you on billboards how fast their processor speed is. And if they do, it's just like, it's fast, Like nobody knows how fast the processor in their iPhone is. Like nobody even knows what that metric means. But that's how the wine industry talks about wine is they give you this technical jargon, this technical specs that winemakers use to speak with one another. And they may use it as marketing copy. And frankly, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I think this really flows in well with the next question, which is I want to talk about, I feel like a lot of the work you do in the wine world as we're talking about all this is to kind of challenge the status quo. I mean, the book is literally called The Rebel School of Wine, right? So we're
Yeah.
definitely in that area. So what is, I mean, I'm going to say one thing. I'm sure there's like a million off the top of your head. What is one thing that frustrates you the most about the wine world, at least currently?
Yeah. It's the thing that's been frustrating me for 20 years and really keeps me going. The way we talk about wine. It's completely wrong. It is not useful, right? Like talking about flavors and aromas and using that to describe wine. Look, like you're not wrong, right? But you're missing the point. Like, have you ever watched a movie with a filmmaker? Or like, have you ever listened to music with a musician? It's not fun at all. They're just like, oh, oh, they really blew the whatever. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just so this part of the scene in the movie, you can't do it, and you're ruining this enjoyable experience. Nothing kills me than you're sitting down to a fancy, nice meal, right? And you're at a restaurant, and then somebody's talking to you about flavors and aromas, and like, oh, you really get the honeysuckle. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, you know? And so wine inherently has all of this romance. It has all of this amazing story around it that we could talk about. And this is what we choose to talk about. And so that really drives me nuts. Like it really drives me nuts because it just feels lazy.
Yeah.
It feels really lazy to take the technical sheets and just use it as marketing copy. There's no creativity, there's no inventiveness. Like bring this to the average person. It's our job as wine professionals to do that, and it's just, we're failing,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'm failing, but generally as a whole.
Yes. No, it's so interesting listening to that because there's like so many thoughts going in my head. Because I'm like, oh well, like I know I like to like dive into a wine and like try to figure out what aromas are happening and learning that, but I have to like stop myself and be like, but is that why you fell in love with wine? Like you might like doing that, and that's fine because you're in like a certain talking about myself. I'm in this different stage of wine where I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't get enough of it. I want to learn this. I do care what the soil is and what the soil, has an effect on the wine and like go deeper into this. But it's like, did you start there by any means? And is that what actually got you into wine? And it was like, no, it was this cool idea that, I got to taste something from another part of the world that I've never visited before. And I could even taste something that was made when I was, the grapes were growing when I was 3 years old. Like,
Yeah.
how cool is that? And like, that is the thing, like you said, and I think that's what, at least to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that like, it's not that you can't talk about the aromas and dive into all that technical jargon, but it's not where we should be starting. And it's not what's like going to like interest people.
Time and place, like being an entrepreneur, I spend a lot of time in and around like the tech startup world and those people. And you ever sit around and listen to like six engineers talk about like their iPhones? It's tough, right? And so how I've always looked at it is imagine you're on a date, right? Would you talk about this on a date, like a first date? Would you use this? Like if I was going to tell a story about wine, they were like, oh, tell a story about wine. Would I be like, okay, well, this one time I had this really expensive bottle and it really gave me honeysuckle and like boysenberry or whatever. Like, you're not having a second date, like, come on. Like, it's time and place. Like, there's a time and place to get nerdy, and with the right people, and there's a time and place to not. And wine has just decided that it's all nerd. It's either nerds or nothing, right?
Yeah. I love that. I also have to laugh a little bit. My corporate job, as I call it, is actually in the tech world. So I've spent a lot of time sitting in a room with
Yeah.
a lot of
Uh-huh.
engineers. And they do really like the details and talking about things. And I'm like, all right, let's pull it back a little bit. Let's talk about the why. Let's make it a little more
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's awesome, but you wouldn't let them write your marketing copy,
Right, exactly. They're like that is good that they are in the details, but we need to pull it out. So in that case, like I feel like this also ties into like we've been hearing a lot, I think, in the wine world about younger generations, millennial, Gen Z, as they're getting to be drinking age, aren't buying as much wine, aren't as interested in well, I shouldn't say it's interested. They're just not buying as much wine. And they're also interacting with it differently, I would say.
Mhm.
What changes do you think the wine industry needs to make in order to kind of, I mean, keep the wine industry alive and not let it die out with, the folks who used to drink wine in a different way?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the wine industry is going to die, right? It's a 9,000-year-old business. It's been around for 9,000 years. It's going to be around for 9,000 more. But it is in danger. Like the culture is in danger, and how it plays a role in our daily life is really in danger, right? And I think when you look at the stats for, millennials or Gen Z, a lot they're being read really the wrong way, The volume of wine sales is going down. But one, there was a giant surplus, right? A lot of people bought too much wine. But two, as the volume is going down, the amount of money spent is actually going up. Last year, America spent $107 billion on wine, and millennials spent 30 billion and Gen Z spent 6, but like what 67% of them aren't even 21 yet, right? And so the culture needs to change. And what the boomers did, and they told me over and over and over and over again, because I was running these festivals saying, hey, this is a perfect place for you to come and talk with millennials. Millennials are going to be your biggest customers one day. Start that relationship now. And they said, nah, we don't need to do that. We'll just wait until they come to us. How has that worked for anybody ever? That's never worked for any industry in the history of anything, you know? And so the culture is shifting and changing. And the biggest problem right now is that nobody's steering the ship. The wineries in California aren't steering it. They're 6,000 small businesses. The importers don't care. They're B2B companies. The restaurants, they can't do this. There's like 10,000, 20,000 restaurants, like that sell wine. So, like, what do we do? How do we save it? There's not a silver bullet here, but we can start by just looking at it differently and talking about it differently and being, this might be earth shattering, nice to people, right? Like we could start being nice to people. Like the amount of times I have seen some kid that took 3 wine classes talk down to a woman with a master's degree in biology will blow that's another one. That's another reason why I wrote this book, because I got sick of seeing that, you know? And so, yeah, I get really fired up over this, but we let the pretentious geeks start like take over,
Ah,
A couple of months ago, I went to dinner with a friend of mine. He's a food writer for the Washington Post. And we went to a 1-star Michelin restaurant here in New York. And it was awesome. Everything was so wonderful. We sat down and the service was so amazing. And then the Somm came over and she was so mean and rude. And so, like, we didn't introduce ourselves. We didn't say who we are, right? And I ended up just, it's a 1-star Michelin restaurant. The cheapest bottle on the list is going to be good. They're not going to have bad bottles. So I just got that one. And then she hated me more. Everybody else was so wonderful. And I'm like, how is this how you treat customers? And oh, now you're shocked that they don't want to buy your products? So
yes.
we need a giant cultural shift. And right now it's happening. And it would be nice if the wine industry could steer it in some way, you know, and embrace this idea of change, which I get it. It's a slow moving industry. It's a product that takes a long time to make, but they still won't embrace it. They
Yeah.
won't, like nothing like Rosé Mansion. We were, 225,000 tickets in one year. The amount of people that came, the sales reps knew who I was because I bought a crap ton of wine. Nobody else even knew we existed. They didn't even know what was going on. And we added a cultural piece. And so
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity here. Will the wine industry change? Will all the wineries that currently exist in 15 years? No, but it's gonna change and it's not going away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I really love the point. I never even thought about it like that wine sales had gone down, but like how much we spend is continuing to go up. And so this thought, and you're not the first person. I know there's somebody else too that was like, we keep saying that like millennials and Gen Z aren't into wine. And it's like, no, they're just not into wine in the same way that other generations were,
Yeah.
because things change. And at one point, wine was a status symbol. I mean, you know, you can look in the history, like you talked about in your book, like it was a status symbol. Certain people could drink certain wines, and that's how you knew where you were in the hierarchy. But like, that doesn't have to be that way now. We don't need to like have it, at least to me, like I think that's something that I would love to do away with. And I think that's connected to what you said of just like, yeah, you don't have to talk down to anyone, whether they know about wine or not. Just find out where they are, introduce them to something. Like, that's how I see it all the time, is like introducing someone to something I think is really freaking cool. And the way to get somebody interested in what you think is cool is to make them think it's cool, not to make them feel dumb or silly or like, and again, I totally stalked your Instagram. When you talked about like when it's like not serving Chardonnay is like not putting on Taylor Swift in the playlist or like making people feel bad for it. And it's like, that's such a good point. Like some people do poo-poo on Taylor, and it's just like, because what? Because a lot of women like her? Is that a bad thing? Is that why we're saying it's no good?
Generally, they don't hate the product, they hate the customer, right? And so, you know, it's kind of crazy too that the wine industry treats, you know, like women the way that they do. Cause like all my events have always been driven by women. Like Rosé Mansion was 98% women. And, you know, like that, they've all gotten hit with the same stick of like, oh, like it's unserious. Like the New York Times wrote about us saying we are unserious. And yeah,
You're like, yes, that is kind of the point. Is that
like
not like
you can be unserious and still learn things, you know? It doesn't have to be. So you can have smart people learning things in an unserious way. Like that's possible. Shocking, I know. Like you can have fun and learn something at the
Yeah,
same
I
time.
know, right. It's like, do you not remember when you were like a kid and science became like doing experiments and you got to like make a volcano blow up? Like, are you telling me you didn't learn about reactions during that? And like, it was unserious. It was fun. You learned something. It can happen.
And look at all the other industries that do it too. You know, like fashion does a really good job. Beauty products does a really good job. I'm not saying don't educate your customers. I'm just saying maybe don't be mean to them and hope that they show up, you know?
Oh, it's so true. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you'd like to purchase your own copy of Tyler's book, Rebel School of Wine, go to rebelschoolofwine.com and use the promo code CORK&FIZZ. That is Cork and Fizz. The and is spelled out A-N-D, and it's all one word, no spaces. So it's CORKANDFIZZ. So go to Rebel School of Wine, use code CORK&FIZZ to get a signed copy of her book and a free pack of wine stickers for only $30. That is a $15 discount. And for this book alone, it's a steal. You get a signed copy, plus the wine stickers are so much fun. I already have them on my laptop right now. And be sure to follow Rebel School of Wine on Instagram and TikTok to learn more from Tyler. If you love this episode as much as I did, I'd love it if you could take a quick second to rate it and leave a review. And if you know a wine lover in your life that would enjoy this episode, please share it with them. It would mean the world to me. In next week's episode, you'll hear part 2 of my interview with Tyler, where we talk about why it's important to talk about the whole story of each wine region and not just a wine's traits. We'll also talk about a few fairly unknown wine regions that you should keep an eye out for, how to build your wine team to drink amazing wine forever, and so much more. Thanks again for listening. And if you want to learn more about wine, come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And if you're interested in exploring new wines and joining an incredible community of wine lovers, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Head to thecorkcrew.com to learn more and use code WINESPECIAL to get your first 2 months for just $8 a month. Cheers!